The word wasn't loud. It was barely more than breath sliding through a vent. Now. That single whisper, carried along metal and air, moved like a spark. In 1 second the whole tier froze. Trays stopped. Feet stopped. Even the TV's silent captions felt like they paused. 2 buildings away, men folded their hands on their beds at the exact same time. In another prison across the state line, phones went quiet in the middle of calls. No one shouted. No one waved. Still, hundreds of people obeyed one voice that no guard could hear. Officer Rivera knew the sound of trouble. It was usually noisy. Not today. Today the quiet itself was the alarm. He stood under the camera dome and watched the day room stiffen like a picture. The red light above the inner door blinked just once and then held steady. "What changed?" he asked into his radio. "Nothing on my board," Control answered. Rivera looked again. Everything had changed. He just couldn't point to it yet. On the far bench, Leo sat very still. He was new to Pelican Bay, but he'd learned fast. Here, silence has rules. He kept his eyes on the floor and his ears open. Beside him, Dante stared straight ahead. One tiny tap from Dante's finger meant don't move. Leo didn't. The whisper had come from a single cell, deep in the security housing unit, the SHU, where men spent 23 hours a day alone. People said that the man inside that cell did not need a yard or a phone to be heard. They said he could run plans from California to Arizona with nothing but patience and a code. They said his orders traveled farther than any voice could. Now. The room obeyed. And then the second part happened, the shocking part. Every man in the block stood at once, turned toward the wall, and placed his hands where a camera could see them. No fight. No noise. Just a picture of perfect order that no staff had called and no one could explain. Rivera's hand hovered near his radio. "All units," he began, then stopped. If he called a panic, he might cause the very storm the room had just avoided. If he didn't, he might miss the message hiding inside this perfect calm. Down the corridor, Nurse Tanya pushed her cart very slowly, like she didn't want to wake a sleeping animal. She had been in buildings that shook and buildings that burned. This kind of quiet felt bigger than both. She whispered to herself, "Breathe," and kept moving. The whisper had been enough. The move was made. But what move? And why now? That's where we were. Now let's go back to the start of the day, to the first small tremble before the whisper crossed the vent. The morning began gray and cool. Fog hung low over the wire. Inside the SHU, a light clicked on in cell 3 to 12. In that cell sat a man some called Mr. Quiet. He was not big. He did not look scary. He never raised his voice. But he had something many people wanted: patience like a mountain and a memory that never dropped a note. He could not use a phone. He could not meet in a group. He could not pass a letter without it being read. So he did something else. He taught a code that had no ink. It lived in taps, in footsteps, in the way a cup turned on a table, in when you looked up and when you didn't. He taught people to hear with their skin. A plan to him was like water running downhill. You didn't push it. You made the path and let gravity do the rest. Across the tier, Leo sat on the bottom bunk, tying and readying his shoes. He liked neat knots. Neat knots were things he could fix. Dante lay on the top bunk with one arm over his eyes. "Tell me again," Leo said. "How can someone in here run things out there?" Dante spoke without moving his arm. "Time. Trust. And a language that can't be erased. If I write a letter, they can read it. If I make a call, they can record it. But if I stand up when that light flickers and you sit down when the heel taps twice, and the whole room moves like a school of fish, there's no letter to find. There's only a pattern. Patterns look like accidents unless you know the song." Leo breathed out. "So the song tells people what to do?" "The song tells people when," Dante said. "The what is simple: change a seat. Skip a call. Share a tray. Wait one more day. 10 small things at the right time can be bigger than one loud thing at the wrong time." Nurse Tanya came by with small cups of medicine. "How's your sleep?" she asked, using their names the way she always did. "Light," Dante said. "Jumpy," Leo said. "Drink water," she told them. "Count your breaths. 4 in. 6 out." Officer Rivera walked the line, eyes soft, steps even. He wrote nothing but noticed everything: 2 older men trading places by the phones, a younger man taking a corner seat with a bad vent and not complaining, cup handles all turned the same way at one table and the opposite way at another. None of it broke a rule he could write up. All of it meant something. By noon, the small signs matched up like dots in a picture a kid might trace. The plan was moving, not on paper, not on a call sheet, but in the air of the room. Rivera felt it the way you feel weather before the clouds change shape. In the SHU, Mr. Quiet watched the light under his door and counted seconds between steps. He did not smile. He did not frown. He waited for the moment when the comm he had built could carry a message across concrete and wire in miles. On the yard, two things happened that told Dante the message was close. First, the line at the phones shrank by itself, two men stepping back to make room for someone who wasn't there yet. Second, the old man on the bench with the calm hands lifted his cup, set it down and lifted it again. It looked like nothing. It was a green light. Today? Leo asked. Soon, Dante said. They filed inside for count. Doors buzzed. Locks thumped. The red light blinked once, then held steady. Rivera took his spot under the camera. He felt the room take a long breath. And then it came. A wind would not have carried it. A bird could not have heard it. But metal knows how to sing through itself. The whisper slid into the world like a secret practiced 1,000 times. Now. Everything that followed felt like watching a tide turn. No crash. No splash. Just water deciding which way to go. The whole tier stood. Hands showed. Heads lowered. Across the building, trays paused mid-air. Across the yard in another facility, a man hung up a phone, turned and sat on his bunk, and the man beside him did the same. A rule that had no ink told hundreds of people to hold still. Rivera did not yell. He did not run for the door. He watched. He counted heartbeats. He weighed choices that were all heavy. Control called in his ear. Status. Calm, Rivera said. But not ours. The calm lasted exactly 1 minute. Then the room flowed again back to normal lines, normal steps, normal sounds. It was like waking up from a dream and finding your hands already making breakfast. Dante exhaled. He did it, he said. Did what? Leo asked. Proved he still can, Dante said. From a box with a door that hardly opens. Why prove it today? Leo said. Dante thought for a long second. Because someone asked the wrong question yesterday. Leo looked confused. What question? The kind that starts, do we still have to? Dante stopped. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The afternoon dipped to a low. A trustee mopped. Papers shuffled at the officer's desk. Nurse Tanya checked her cart list twice, like checking could keep the building steady. The quiet felt tired, not dangerous. For a while. Then, slowly, like the start of a drum far away, the taps began. Not many. Not loud. Just enough for those who knew the steps to take them. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Long pause. It was a map, not a shout. A folded scrap the size of a postage stamp slid under Leo's door. He stared at it like it might bite. Leave it, Dante said. Leo left it. The scrap slid on without help, as if the floor wanted it to move. It stopped 2 doors down. A hand in a slot pulled it through like the ocean takes a shell. Rivera saw the paper move. He marked the time in his head and kept his body still. If he sent a team to grab it, the paper would be gone and the room would turn hard. If he did nothing, the paper would still be gone, but the room would stay soft. Today, soft was the win. Evening came. The vents hummed a little louder. The lights dimmed a little more. Pelican Bay always felt like it held its breath at this hour. People got tired and then careful. In the SU, Mr. Quiet sat on the edge of his bunk and listened to the building he could not see. He did not need to see it. He knew the song. Before lights out, another tiny thing changed. A man who always sat near the TV with no sound, stood and gave his chair to a younger man. No words. No nod. Just a clean trade. 10 seconds later, 2 other trades happened at opposite corners like mirrors. That's when Rivera knew this wasn't only about today. This was the start of a new calendar. He picked up his phone and called control. Any transfers pending from the SHU? None today, the voice answered. Rivera didn't argue. He just said, check again. The last low of the day slid into the last high without warning. The red light over the inner door shifted from slow blink to steady glow. A voice on the speaker said, stand by for program change. Dante's jaw tightened. Here it comes. Hear what comes? Leo asked. The part where a whisper in a box becomes a rule in your room, Dante said. The gate at the end of the tier buzzed. Keys clinked. Boots sounded in the tunnel. Leo felt sweat at the back of his neck even though the air was cold. 2 officers stepped in with a third behind them. The third carried a clipboard and a sealed envelope. He looked at the paper, then at the tier. Effective immediately, he said, voice flat, housing changes. He read numbers. He read names. They were not random. They were pieces being set on squares drawn in the air. Leo felt his stomach drop. His name was not called. Dante's was. Up 2. Across 1, the officer said. Dante stood. He had prepared himself all day for this exact moment without knowing it. He looked at Leo once. The look said stay steady. Then he gathered his few things, a cup, a book, a photo he never showed, and stepped out. Rivera opened the door and met Dante's eyes for half a second. It was a quiet promise from a man with a badge to a man with a past. I will keep this floor safe if you keep this room calm. Dante nodded. He walked. The officer kept reading. Another name. Another move. The map redrew itself right in front of them, lines you couldn't see snapping into place like magnets. In the SU, Mr. Quiet listened for the second sound he had been waiting for all day, the new footsteps above his own, the ones that told him the calendar had turned. When he heard them, he finally lay back and closed his eyes. Down the tier, Leo stood in his doorway, hands at his sides, heart too big for his chest. He felt the new pattern settle over the block like a fresh sheet, smooth, cool, a little too tight. The officer reached the last page on his clipboard. He paused, frowned, and looked at Rivera. There's one more, he said. Rivera lifted his chin. Go ahead. The officer read the name. It was a name Leo knew but didn't expect. It wasn't a prisoner's name. It was a unit. A whole unit. Tonight, the officer said, Arizona makes the same moves. The room did not gasp. It did not cheer. It did what this world always does when a decision falls like a coin. It became a pond with no ripples. Rivera stared at the envelope like it might tell him how a voice in a box touched a building across a desert. Nurse Tanya, heading back with her empty cart, stopped just before the door. She pressed her hand to the cool glass. Please let it stay quiet, she whispered. For one long beat it did. Then the speaker popped again. Stand by, the voice said. Additional changes in the morning. Dante disappeared around the corner with his cup and his book. Leo heard 3 soft taps in the vent above him. And far away, past the wire and the dark in the miles of road, a phone in another prison rang twice and then went silent, as if it were listening for a word small enough to fit through metal. The word that would decide whether the next day began with calm, or with a lock that wouldn't open. Leo woke to a sound so soft he wasn't sure it was real. 3 taps in the vent above his pillow, then a long pause, then 2. The building was still dark. Count hadn't started. Somewhere, a door groaned and settled like an old ship. He sat up slow. The air felt colder than last night, like the walls had been holding their breath and finally let it go. Dante's bunk across the tier was empty now. New calendar. New map. Same rules. A trustee rolled a cart past with breakfast trays. The wheels squeaked in a steady rhythm. Then a skip. Even that felt like code. Leo took his tray, set it on the small metal shelf, and realized he wasn't hungry. He drank the milk so he'd have something to do with his hands. Count, a voice called. Doors thunked in order, section by section. Officer Rivera's voice floated down the row, calm, measured. Stand. Show hands. The tier obeyed. Numbers matched. Radios hissed. The red light above the inner door blinked once, slow and sleepy. After count, Nurse Tanya came with her cart, her list taped to the handle like always. Morning, Leo, she said, passing the cup through the slot. Any headaches? A little, he admitted. Drink water, she said. 4 in, 6 out. Keep your shoulders low. She glanced at the empty top bunk across the way. Change is hard. Even good change hurts. Was this good? He asked. It was quiet, she said. Quiet is good in here even when it scares you. She moved on. Leo let the pill melt under his tongue and thought about the whisper, about how one word had reached deserts and fences and phones. He thought about the last line on the clipboard. Arizona makes the same moves. If that was true, this wasn't just a local rhythm. It was a song big enough to fill 2 states. By mid-morning the tier slipped into low gear. A trustee mopped the same square twice. A counselor walked by with a stack of forms and eyes that didn't want to meet anyone else's. The TV showed weather with the sound off. People conserved energy the way divers conserve air. Officer Rivera made a slow pass under the camera domes. He felt the same thing Leo felt, the quiet with teeth. Last night's envelope had been real. The names had been right. He checked the transfer list twice before sunrise. No official movement from the SHU. No bus. No paper. But the tier had still rearranged itself like a chessboard moved by magnets. He stopped at the desk. The control officer looked up from his monitor. You see anything? Rivera asked. Just tidy, the man said. Too tidy. Rivera nodded once. Tidy is good after a storm. Can also be the eye of one. Back in his cell, Leo listened, scrape of a cup. Heel tap. Long silence. He practiced breathing like Tanya taught him. 4 in. 6 out. Somewhere down the row, a soft knock answered nothing. The room was having a conversation in a language he could almost understand. Almost. Yard, a guard called and the doors buzzed in sequence. The line formed itself without help. Older men took the benches. Phone lines stood in 2 neat rows. No one pushed. No one cut. The tower window flashed once with sun. Leo followed the line, staying a half step back the way Dante had taught him. Obey the room until you learn why. Outside, the fog had gone and the sky was a hard sheet of gray-blue. The fence hummed in his teeth. The concrete radiated last night's cold. Leo paced the track with a short step, eyes down but not shut. He could feel the chain running under the day like a cable underwater. Near the pull-up bars, a small scene played out in silence. A younger man unclipped his ID and handed it to an older man who checked it, nodded once and clipped it back on. It wasn't about IDs. It was about permission. At the benches, a man with calm hands set his cup down, lifted it, set it down again. The signal Dante called a green light. 3 men broke formation and drifted toward the far wall. No huddle, no whisper. They stood like men reading a menu that wasn't there. Officer Rivera walked a slow perimeter. He noted the cup. He noted the drift. He noted the way the phone line parted for a man who hadn't arrived yet. He resisted the itch to call in a team and break the spell. If he broke this and didn't find anything on paper, he would only make the room loud. Loud was dangerous. Control, he said into his radio, casual like asking for weather. Any updates from the SHU? Negative, the voice came back. Status holding. Rivera didn't argue with the voice. He argued with the feeling in his chest. Someone is steering from a box, it said. And the box is not empty. Yard ended without a ripple. The line filed back through the tunnel. The red light over the inner door blinked in time with the gate, like the building was keeping its own heartbeat. Leo counted the steps to his door, 28. He counted them again, 28. The numbers helped. Inside, lunchtime. Trays. Plastic. Steam. The room lifted and settled like a slow tide. A little laughter, real, brittle, brief. A trustee wiped a table until the metal shone. Leo put food in his mouth and barely tasted it. That's when he saw it. A shadow where there shouldn't be one, just inside the slot of cell 3 on the upper tier. Not a hand. A slave. The person drew it back like you draw back a curtain. Leo looked away quick so he wouldn't read the wrong sentence with his eyes. Good, a voice above him said softly. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. The voice wasn't Dante's, but it wore the same patience. You learn fast, the voice said. Leo swallowed. Sergeant stays in 7, Cruz had said before the escort. That meant the second in command. 7 was on the upper tier, 3 cells over. Leo stared at his tray. The fork made a tiny ring on the metal. He didn't answer. In this world, quiet is a kind of yes. Afternoon. Low again. The pattern held. Rivera checked the cameras, the logs, the faces. He phoned control once more. Anything from Arizona? He asked. Local says they're calm, the voice said. But they shuffled housing last night. Same numbers you sent. Rivera squeezed the receiver. I didn't send numbers, he said. Static filled the line for a second, then the voice came back cautious. Then someone else did. He hung up and stared at the empty desk in front of him. The envelope last night. The readouts this morning. The near-perfect calm. He wrote 3 words in his pocket notebook and then covered them with his thumb. Power without paper. Just before dinner, the tier tilted. Not with sound. With attention. Every head turned a fraction the same way birds will glance at the same patch of sky. The vents hummed louder. The red light over the inner door steadied. Leo felt his hands go cold. A guard rolled a cart down the corridor. On top was a plain brown mailer, thick, sealed with clear tape. The label read like a safe thing, legal mail, but the corners were bent, like it had traveled farther than a courthouse. Mail call, the guard said, bored, efficient. He slid envelopes to doors. Receipts signed. Slots closed. When he reached cell 7 on the upper tier, he paused. 7, he called. A folded hand appeared in the slot, calm, steady, not greedy. The guard slid the brown mailer through. The hand drew it in without a word. Leo's mouth went dry. He knew enough now to understand. The room had spent a whole day setting the table for this one delivery. The whisper last night. The sea trades. The yard drift. The cup. The green light. All of it had been gravity pulling this package to this door. Rivera watched the transfer like you watch a match near dry grass. He moved closer, slow. Not to snatch it, to see. The hand inside cell 7 didn't open the package. It rested there on the inner shelf. 10 slow seconds. Then the slot closed. The red light didn't change. The vents kept humming. The world pretended to be ordinary. "Chow!" someone called, and the tier lifted into motion. Lines formed. Trays slid. The mailer sat in the dark behind a steel door, and the building behaved like it didn't exist. Leo ate 3 bites he couldn't taste. He did not look up. He did not look at cell 7. He obeyed the room until the Y arrived. It arrived after dinner, during the softest part of the evening, when the lights dim and men try to remember different skies. A tiny sound, paper against metal, whispered from the upper tier. Then another, plastic peeling, slow and neat. Then silence. 5 minutes later, a trustee pushed the laundry cart past cell 7. The cart rattled like always. No one watched it and everyone watched it. When it reached the landing between tiers, a rag fell from the top, landed by the wall and stuck there like it was wet. Officer Rivera took 1 step toward it, then stopped. If he bent to pick it up, he would start a movie he couldn't stop. If he left it, the room would decide what the rag meant. He let the room decide. A minute later, a broom slid across the rag. It folded neatly and climbed the bristles. The cart rolled on. Inside cell 7, the slot opened just wide enough for air. A piece the size of a fingernail slipped out, thin, clear, almost nothing. It kissed the floor and stuck like dew. A second piece followed. A third. Each almost invisible. Each placed where a shoe would step without stepping on it. Leo saw them because he was looking at nothing, at emptiness, at corners, at the space most people ignore. He realized the mailer hadn't been the message. The message had been taken apart into pieces too small to be obvious and was now being carried by a cart, a rag, a broom, a man who didn't know he was part of it. The chain moved. It always moved. Rivera's radio cracked. Control to C-tier. Supervisor en route. Hold on all non-essential movement. He didn't like that. Define non-essential, he said, too dry to be a joke. Meals, meds count, the voice said. Everything else, freeze? The word freeze rolled down the concrete like a slow wave. Men settled. Trays stopped. The cart parked. The rag no one had seen existed too brightly in every head. Then the building blinked. The lights cut for half a second, just enough for your stomach to fall. When they came back, the red bar over the inner door flared hard and turned steady. The radio spat static. Far off in the tunnel, a motor whined, then whined again as if the door wasn't sure which way to choose. Leo's cell slot rattled from the pressure change. He could feel the whole tier leaning toward something they could not see. A shout came down the tunnel, short, clipped, swallowed by concrete. Not a fight shout. A fix-it shout. The supervisor arrived at a jog. Rivera briefed him in a sentence. Legal mail to 7. Room is tidy. Pieces are moving. Search? The supervisor asked. Rivera stared at the upper tier. If we make this loud and find nothing, we'll break the calm for a week, he said. If we make it quiet and watch, we might see the map. The supervisor waited. He didn't like either road. He picked the one that didn't set the floor on fire. Watch, he said. A second cart turned the corner, this one with clean linen stacked in squares. It rolled slow. It reached the landing. The top sheet fluttered once, like a flag deciding which way the wind blew. At the far end of the tier, a heel tapped. Once. Too loud. Every eye found cell 7 without moving. The slot opened a finger's width. A voice flowed through like breath across a bottle, so soft it wasn't a word so much as a direction. Now. The laundry sheet lifted. The lights cut again, longer this time. And in the dark between blinks, something small and crucial moved from a door no one could open to a cart no one would stop. While, in the tunnel, a steel door finally chose a side and slammed so hard the whole tier felt it in their ribs.